before you keyboard warriors out there go down into the comments and get all nasty about this, listen to me. This video is for those that are a lot like me. Not you guys that are sound engineers and do this stuff for a living or have had, many classes on how to produce the perfect sound. Not for you. If you are one of those guys, go to the next video, turn off this video. It's not for you, so don't watch it. However, if you are a person who, like me, just stumbled into, videography or audio, podcasting, doing voiceovers or whatever it is you do, and you want to be able to make your sound as good as you possibly can without having to take 3 years of audio engineering, this video is for you. I bought the RodeCaster Pro a while ago, and I have the Shure SM7B dynamic microphone paired with it. So that is my setup for podcasting as well as doing voiceovers on videos. What I found myself doing is I had the audio processing on the RodeCaster Pro going, but I was also in Adobe Audition doing processing there as well, or maybe it's Premiere Pro. I'm a video maker, podcaster, and I do all kinds of different stuff with audio. And when I'm making videos, I'm using Premiere Pro. So I'm taking these sound clips that come off the camera, and then I'm applying effects or processing audio effects inside of Premiere Pro. Now, when I'm podcasting, I'm in Adobe Audition, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking effects and putting them on the audio to get it sounding just where I want it to, or what I thought was just where I want it to. Now, I always have the same processing being done on the RodeCaster Pro itself. And before its most recent firmware update, that was really all there was. But with the most recent firmware update, you can dive into these effects and get it sounding almost perfect. So now whenever you're doing voiceover or podcasting or using the microphone through the RodeCaster Pro, all of those settings, you can really go in there and dive deep. And that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna take a look at the depth of those settings and where I have them set to. And so that way you'll have an understanding of what they do and how you may wanna set them or adjust them to fit your voice. And what this is gonna do is save you a lot of time having to double process, as well as frustration trying to get it right each time. And the third thing it's gonna do is help your sound a lot better. So let's dive in. Before we dive into this too deep, we need to change a couple of settings. So we're gonna go here, and we're gonna go to advanced. So in your settings, in advanced, we're gonna go to audio, and we're gonna go to multi-track. Now we're gonna turn this post fader on if it's not. And what this does is it bakes the effects that you're applying into the audio that's being recorded, rather it's on the card or rather, like you're doing, like I'm doing in Adobe Audition. You're gonna want that on. In the operations, we're gonna go ahead and turn the broadcast meters on. That comes default as off. And what the broadcast meters are you get these decibel lines so that you have an idea of exactly how loud. If you're using Adobe Audition, you can see how the two compare. So you get a broadcast meter, it just gives you those decibel lines. Under processing, I'm turning ducking off and the effects edit mode on. You can also do this on the companion app, which we're getting ready to dive into next.
Let's go ahead and launch RodeCaster Pro companion app. Now, typically this is what you're gonna see. If that's what you see, go up to RodeCaster Pro, go to File, and open Effects Editor. And then it'll bring this screen up. And basically this is just replacing you touching the touchscreen right on the RodeCaster Pro itself. So this makes it very nice. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure the effects edit mode is on. This allows you to dive into each one of these effects in depth. And that's what you want. Otherwise it's just going to be a generic setting set by Rode. Let's start over on the left with a high pass filter. The high pass filter simply is an equalizer that eliminates some of the low energy below a certain frequency. And in this case, I have it set to about 41, 40 in there. And this is probably going to vary for you anywhere between 40 and 80, depending on your surroundings and your voice and your situation. But this is what I have it set to. And if you ever just want to go back to a factory setting, all the time on every one, there's a revert to your previous setting, or here there's a set to the default. The noise gate blocks out sounds. It's more for like an ambient room. It kind of gets rid of those buzzing sounds, or those things that you just don't want in there that maybe your microphone is picking up. You have to be careful with this because that background sound is still going to be there when you're speaking, but what we're doing is between the words that you're saying, or between sentences, whenever there's a gap in your vocals, the noise gate is now going to take control. And the threshold is, what dB do you want it to take control? It's the floor for the entire audio system, or the whole audio that you're recording. Now, what I have found works best for me is 50 dB. So in other words, at 50 dB, that's the floor, and that's when this noise gate will kick in. The attack is how quick the gate turns off when you speak again. And again, this is going to vary with your equipment and your atmosphere, but when you start speaking again, how fast do you want it to turn off? And so you got to play with this to make sure that it sounds smooth. You don't want an abrupt change. You want a nice smooth transition. And I found that 1.5 milliseconds is what works best for me. And the hold, after speaking, how long before the gate engages, it turns on? And so for me, I like it to snap right into it for the most part, but I found that 0.1 seconds is what sounds the smoothest. Again, you don't want abrupt changes because then the listener can pick up on it. The release is for after speaking, how long before the gate applies the range. So this is the smoothness factor, the release and the range. How long does it take to kick in the range? The range is how many dBs we're going to lower the noise. So if there's a buzz, we're going to lower it by 12.4 dB. And we're going to do that over a period of around 1 second. So if you extend this, it makes it a longer transition. And with the range, the higher the dB or the lower the dB, depending on what you want to do, will make the background noise way quieter, or so that you don't hear any reduction in noise at all. And so you have to play with these two, because everyone's environment, everyone's microphone, everyone's voice is different. But typically what I have found is a release around 1 second and a range of 12.4 dB works the best. If you go more than 12.4 dB or closer to zero, it's going to start sounding a little bit odd. If you take the 12.4 closer to zero, it's going to be more and more abrupt and not sound very natural, and it makes the gate very noticeable. So be careful with that. The De-Esser helps, with the S's. What I have found is the threshold is 45, and you can play with this just a little bit. To be honest, I wouldn't spend a ton of time in here. Neither of these are very dramatic, so it's just kind of tweaking it and getting it just the way that you think sounds best with your voice. So these are the settings that I use: minus 45 dB, a 25:1 ratio. Go through these and maybe start with my settings and then tweak them just a little bit to get it to sound the way that you want. Now we're getting into the real important ones. And the compressor, in my opinion, is probably the most important. And what it does is it levels out your audio. Now, what the app doesn't have that on screen on the RodeCaster Pro itself, the RodeCaster Pro has it has little bars where you can monitor. The left bar is the before compression. The middle bar is the after compression, your settings. And the right bar is how much compression. And the right bar it'll be in red and come down from the top. Now, the reason I mention this is because that's how I use those bars to set my original compression. And so the threshold, when the audio goes above this level, the compressor starts. So whenever it's above 30.6, that's when it starts. How'd I get 30.6? Well, on the screen of the RodeCaster Pro itself, I adjust this slider until I just barely start to see some red. So it's just starting to apply just a little bit of compression, and that's where I leave the threshold. I moved the ratio to a 3:1, and the ratio is how much compression is applied. For every 3 decibels above the threshold, the compressor will squeeze it down to 1 decibel. So that's the amount of compression that we're getting, and you can play with that, but for voiceovers and vocals, typically it's somewhere around 3 to 1. The attack, once the audio goes above the threshold, how long before the compression applies the ratio? Okay, so you can play with this a little bit. And what I found is that 1 millisecond is usually pretty close to that is what sounds the best for vocals or voiceovers. The release, how long after audio goes back below the threshold does the compression last? And again, we're looking for a smooth transition, and you'll play with this just a little bit, but I like a 0.27 is where I have it. And I'll tell you a little tip: if you're trying to do this on the screen of the RodeCaster Pro itself, you're not going to be able to get exact because it's just a slider with your finger. If you use this app, you can really get this thing. You can type in the number, or you can use your mouse to get a pretty you can get down to pretty much whatever decibel that you want to. So just a little tip for you. What happens with the compressor is we're losing volume because we're compressing the highs and the lows. So you may want to adjust it a little bit. In fact, I have mine up almost to 5 here to get a little loudness back in the audio. These two effects, they can really make or break your audio. And what I encourage you to do in all of these is, after you get it set to where you want it, click the little enable button underneath of it. You see the difference there? And then click it again. And that's what you're gonna, be able to use to say, okay, it's better or not as good as before. And you can do that on each effect to make sure you get it fine-tuned exactly where you want it. So the tune, use the frequency that you think sounds best with your voice. The mix is how much is it applied to the audio that you're doing, how often, what's the intensity of it, and then harmonics, tweak that just to get it where you want it, where it sounds best for your voice. And we're gonna do the same thing on the big bottom. Okay, so the big bottom, it really emphasizes those deep tones, and how much it emphasizes those deep tones is really up to you. So you can adjust these settings. I think for my voice, these are the settings that sound the best, but this is individualized for everyone. So you're gonna have to play with this and get this just right.
I really hope you guys got something out of this video. If you'll do me a favor, the way YouTube, puts your videos out there is by people liking it and commenting and watching. So, share the video with someone you think may be able to use the information in this video. Like it, and leave me a comment. Tell me about how you do your audio processing, and whether or not you have the RodeCaster Pro, or maybe you're interested in getting the RodeCaster Pro. Tell us what you think down in the comments. I appreciate your support. I'll see you guys on the next video. You have an awesome week.